Well, as we've all talked about, and we talk about it at dinner with our families, the deep end means many things to many people. In terms of fantasy football IDP, I mean, that is the deep end, right? But we are not here, even with Matt Schauf in our presence, we are not here to debate Jaquiski Tart and Oluokun of the Falcons and all the rest of the IDP world. I'm fine if it comes up, but the plan is to go over the Draft Sharks Invitational, get everybody ready for Week 8. Mike Schauf, Adam Krautwurst, Matt Schauf. This is the deep end. Matt, did I whet your appetite there? You want to talk IDPs? I mean, I'm learning a little, but I'm not you at all yet.
I mean, I'm swimming in the deep end here, and you dangled some IDP worms in front of me. I thought you were going to yank them away all of a sudden.
What's the key to cornerback?
The key to
cornerback every week and get 1 point where I'm projected for 9.
The key to cornerback is to not pay too much attention to it, to not invest too early, and then to get guys that can make big plays. That was the plan that brought Trevon Diggs onto a roster back at draft time. Because when you play cornerback specifically, you're playing with a roster deep enough that other positions will carry the consistent scoring. So you want guys that have shots at big plays.
Adam, already we're to Trevon Diggs, and we are definitely in the deep end. I think you have to agree.
Yeah, tart. That's tart character. Is that a dessert? I don't even know what that is. I'm not sure.
That is on that 49ers. Jaquiski Tart's in that 49ers secondary. He's a safety.
Jaquiski Tart. Wow.
How about Kirkpatrick? Was that the name of the guy who came in on Sunday night, Matt, and defended Michael Pittman, maybe like you or I would on that touchdown by Pittman where you sort of jumped early and fell and it was like a walk-in touchdown? Who was that?
Honestly, I think I was half asleep at that point. I don't even remember who was specifically in that game.
Best that we not talk about it anyway. Well, let's start with the Draft Sharks Invitational, and Matt, my man here is sore. I mean, it's got to be a good team if you're second overall, but he cannot taste that yellow, and I think it's killing him.
It's got to be.
Me? Look at this thing. It's a cruel joke. See,
It's a cruel joke.
When you get into the deep end and you're playing high stakes, this is exactly what it is. It's chasing Chad Schrader the rest of your life. This is what it is. It's constantly wanting what he has. So. But yeah, no, it's been I gained like 40 points on him this week. I was hoping it was too late last night for me to do the math in my head. So I was hoping when I woke up, I would somehow be in first, but I'm not, but I'm happy that Matt joined me in the top 5 again. Matt's used to being in the top 5. He was in the top 5 last year. This is his competition. We're all trying to hang with him.
Adam, you're calling it a cruel joke. You're only like 3 Tyler Lockett games away from Chad Schroeder.
That's right. 3 rock solid games.
So Cordaro Patterson, Matt, he seems to keep coming up. I don't know if he's this year's Mike Davis exactly. Some position confusion as well, but in MFL, he's a receiver. I guess that doesn't really matter here. Patterson has been, if he's on your team, it's got to be helping a lot.
He is my top scoring wide receiver on this entire team. I've got Cortland Sutton right behind him. I've got Brandon Cooks there. Robert Woods, of course, coming along slowly. Michael Pittman. So there are some other, live bullets there, but Cordaro Patterson has been the revelation. It's been especially important for my team because I was in the Christian McCaffrey slot in this draft. So I've been missing him for a few weeks. So Patterson's been a big one. And obviously anybody like me who got Patterson, there's a whole lot of luck in that. But the part of Patterson that's not luck is I was vehemently against Mike Davis. So the reason I took any Patterson at all was because if I strongly dislike Mike Davis and there's something late in the draft that is at all attractive, that has a chance to do anything. Obviously, I wasn't saying Cordaro Patterson's going to have a breakout season, but if I hate the starter that much, I might as well take a late shot on the guy who has some physical ability.
Yeah. Why do I feel like, that's absolutely right. And I know this is kind of a off topic, but I feel like Laviska Shenault could be the next Cordaro Patterson. Like maybe we don't have to wait till he's like 30 to do it, but why? And it's not going to be on the Jaguars, but like, I feel like there are other players that maybe the league will look and say, okay, we've got these guys that are just athletes. They can run, they can catch, they can play all over the place. Maybe this year he's a running back for us. Maybe next year he's a receiver for us. He's always our kick returner. Like, why can't we just have more players like that in the league? And there probably are.
Well, I think sports, baseball and hockey come to mind first. Basketball too, I guess, are trending toward less position designations, and think about Kyle Pitts, who we'll talk about later, or Gesicki. I mean, tight ends that never play in line. I mean, Patterson has not been a wide receiver for years in the NFL. I mean, think of a Monday night game when the Patriots were in Buffalo a couple of years ago when Derek Anderson was starting for the Bills in an emergency, and Patterson was like their starting running back, maybe New England. If he didn't start, he got carries in that game wearing 84. So what is he? You said a lot. I mean, he's the best kickoff return man in NFL history, probably.
Ooh. Devin Hester just entered the chat.
Yeah, he's the best punt returner in NFL history, so we're glad to have him with us. And yeah, I mean, an athlete with an opening. That's what it comes down to. So you said a little bit already. I was going to ask you, Matt, like how much of that was, yes, I believe in this player, and how much of it is like, I'm tired, and I know. Maybe you don't get tired. I get tired. There's this much I know, because we're going to talk later on in drafts. I think that's where I really fell short this year. And when we talk Draft Sharks Invitational, like last year with guys who are winning, a lot of those guys, I mean, their key men were at the bottom of the draft.
I don't get tired during drafts. I get tired when I'm reading children's books. Unfortunately, my kids are a little bit older at this point, so I don't have that dragging on me. But drafts are like espresso. So as long as the draft keeps going, I'm still going. I mean, like I said, the draw to Patterson was that they didn't have a starting running back, and Mike Davis was going early, and I was strongly opposed to Mike Davis. And, behind that, it was like, well, who's the answer? And nobody knew. Even the Falcons didn't know. They got to opening day, and Cordaro Patterson was playing. I don't think he even played half as many snaps as Mike Davis in the opener. So it's not like the Falcons were hiding their intentions. They've been figuring this out as the season went on. So I think the lesson with Cordaro Patterson is just because, well, I guess there's two of them really. Just because you don't know what the answer is doesn't make the seemingly obvious answer the answer. And if you don't believe in that guy up there, talking about Mike Davis in the summer, I kept linking him to Toby Gerhart with the Jaguars when they signed him in free agency from Minnesota. And it was like, well, I'm not excited about Toby Gerhart or the Jaguars, but I mean, who else is going to carry the ball? He's going to get 250 carries, and he didn't. He stunk, and there was no answer there. So just because you can't see what the answer is doesn't mean that first guy is a better answer than he seems like. So if you don't believe in that guy, then when it gets later in the draft, you take somebody that's there. And it just so happened that in a totally garbage backfield, Cordaro Patterson is an athlete. So we didn't know how they were going to use him. They didn't know how they were going to use him. It's still developing right now. I mean, every single week has looked different for Patterson. So the takeaway here, I think, is when you get late into drafts, don't try to figure out necessarily how it's going to happen all the time. There are certainly situations where you can say, this is what can happen for this guy. But sometimes it's just, this guy is talented. He's in a place where he could get opportunity. I'm going to take a shot and see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. I think those are all great points. Now, I brought up earlier that this is the second year of the Invitational. It's your second year in the top 5. Do you remember? I don't remember what you did last year as far as strategy wise, but do you? So this is for people who don't know. This is tight end premium. It's super flex. It's best ball. You have to start 3 receivers, so it's pretty unique. And you obviously started running back, quarterback here. Did you start quarterback early last year?
I forget. I definitely took 2 quarterbacks within the first 3 rounds. I forget if it was round 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, but I was picking in the middle of the round and got Dak and Russell Wilson early.
Okay. So do you think like that's a thing that you'll continue to do in these super flex type leagues, is take your 2 QBs early?
Well, it's funny. In this one, I remember wondering whether I should just take one of the quarterbacks and wait and see what got back to me. And so I eventually was like, well, if it's close, I might as well go with the quarterbacks here because there's a better chance that I'll like what makes it back to me at the other spots. And I think that's my takeaway is if it's close, I'm going to lean toward quarterback because they're going to dry up pretty quickly.
I'm looking at Leonard Fournette's name on yours and then trying to look up my draft because I drafted Fournette. My team is not doing well this year. with certain injuries and just mistakes. But I drafted Fournette in round 13 in Draft Sharks Invitational 4 by mistake. It's the one time where I ran out of time and tried to get Jamal Williams at the last second and got Fournette. And Matt, I mean, McCaffrey is down and Carson is down. Fournette probably has a lot to do with your standing.
He definitely does. He's, I think, my second highest scorer that's not a quarterback. Leonard Fournette's a guy that was higher in the Draft Sharks rankings and came up higher in our war room during drafts than I was comfortable drafting him. I would pass on him for a round or two and then be like, all right, fine. If nobody else is taking him, I'm going to take him. I went the same way in my FFPC main event draft. And, you know, I sometimes with those guys, I'm like, all right, Jared, we got to move this guy down. Kevin, what do you think? And then other times it's like, well, I don't really have a strong argument against him. He just doesn't make me feel comfortable. So, you know, it was one of those where I should just trust the war room, and that's why we collaborate. But he's been key. And this was, you know, kind of like with Patterson. It wasn't like we definitely think Leonard Fournette is way better than everybody else and he's going to break through. It was more like, we don't like Ronald Jones. We don't like Gio Bernard. This is going to be a good offense. There's going to be opportunity. If Fournette gets that lead touch role, he could really do something good. And, you know, if you took him in that range of RB 30 or so, he's definitely paying off.
I think you have a team that should get better from here.
Yeah.
Like Fournette, no signs of slowing. Patterson, who we talked about, his snap share is going up. They, you know, there were two ways that could go, right? Like, oh, he's not playing very much, sell high. But now Atlanta has sort of bought in on Patterson, it seems, more so, and he's playing. McCaffrey comes back. Carson probably comes back. Anderson, in the year he's having, that doesn't have to turn around, but there are good signs for that. I don't know. Like, I think your team is probably in a great spot because when I look at it here, I'm seeing a lot of guys that haven't had very good first halves, but still are in good position.
Yeah, just wait till Derek Carr goes down and I get that Marcus Mariota sleeper away.
Bridgewater could come out.
That's right.
That could happen too.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of these Christian McCaffrey teams now, he's not back this week. He's back the following week, correct? Or, you know,
hopefully.
eligible to come back. Right. Exactly. But yeah, a lot of these Christian McCaffrey teams who are doing well in whatever competition that they're in, those are interesting because those teams are poised for, you know, for massive second half seasons. And I think, yeah, you're absolutely right, Mike. This team, you know, if cross your fingers, Carson comes back, you know, because I don't know what's going on with the neck injury, but yeah, if you get Carson and McCaffrey back, you're poised for a nice late season push for the number 1 overall spot.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Sterling Shepard makes it back here pretty soon too. I like the wide receiver group the more I look at it, for sure.
Yeah, McCaffrey just got to hang around, you know, like this team is in great shape, winning its division. Adam and I have a Pros versus Joes team with McCaffrey. We've slipped to 4th, and you got to sacrifice something. And in our draft, we didn't get a lot of running backs. Ramondre Stevenson was interesting, then he was inactive, so we took the 0 in that best ball this week and ended up 4th overall, or at least we are through 7 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good luck, Matt. I mean, you get a big check. The team comes over. They ring your doorbell. I think there's a whole big production. There's a band. I think if you win, it's quite a spectacle. I've heard. Not that I know firsthand.
Yeah, and then of course everybody on Twitter is just going to think that I cheated just because I'm a Draft Sharks guy. It's all right there, folks. You can watch the draft happen and see for yourself.
Yeah, maybe for you, Lenny will actually show up with a check to your house. You know
Ed McMahon style.
At McMahon style.
Adam and I broadcast that draft. I mean, I know I was outside, but I was focused enough to think that it was legit. So, well, good luck, and it's nice seeing you again.
Thank you. You guys too. Thanks for having me on.
Happy Halloween. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah. I got 3 kids. I'm always ready for Halloween. As long as everybody has a costume, we'll be all set.
Every day is Halloween.
That's right.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, take care, guys.
All right, see you, Matt.
All right, Matt, looking good in that tournament. So are you, but
right.
Still craving and missing the thing. It's a play. It should be in the theater somewhere. You're just missing you have everything in the world except one thing.
That's it.
The yellow.
The yellow. I just want. Well, first I wanted the yellow. Now I'm like 6 points away from $2,000. Now I want the $2,000. You know, so
yeah. But you can't have the money without the yellow.
That's right. Absolutely right. So.
All right. So week 8, what does the free agent landscape look like?
This is interesting. So I started doing waivers today, this morning. Usually I do like the first half of my 9 million teams, and then tomorrow I'll finish up. Or if there's some injury stuff that comes out in tomorrow morning or whatever, because you get the practice schedules and all that, I might go back and change some stuff. But I usually do half today, half tomorrow. And I there's not really a lot of a couple guys that are out there that aren't necessarily in a lot of free agent articles is Jones. Fournette's back up there. Ronald Jones. Again, people like to make fun of him and all that, but he's available in these FFPC football guys leagues, these main event leagues. There's a couple that I've seen that he's available in. And again, he's a high-end handcuff. And here's the thing. I've seen I was going to tweet something today and I didn't want to, today was such a great day. Side note on Twitter I love when the players start to post pictures and we can talk about teams and get excited for people that we've drafted with and teams that are really good, pushing for $500,000. And it's like, it was a fun, like flex day today where everyone was kind of like posting some cool lineups. And, so one of the things, like I saw some analysts, a couple today posting like, this guy's Mike Davis is droppable. And this guy, like, no running back is droppable. No, especially a guy like Mike Davis. No, Ronald Jones is not droppable. People who are dropping Ronald Jones are just not, they either haven't done this before with these tournament styles or haven't played maybe high stakes before or whatever, but he's a Leonard Fournette injury away from being Leonard Fournette. Like, and look at their, like, Leonard Fournette didn't even play the entire fourth quarter and maybe even most of the second half. There's going to be a lot of those games where Ronald Jones has an opportunity. He was stuffed at the goal line like 3 times on Sunday. And he had, if he scores there, he could have a pretty decent game. So I realize that the coaching staff doesn't love him, but he looks explosive. And if Fournette goes down, you're going to want a guy like Ronald Jones. I don't know if you've seen him on any of your waivers.
Yeah, a couple. I'm holding him in a couple places too because, he's not quite Tony Pollard as somebody you can play anyway.
Sure.
But he's maybe he's close to A.J. Dillon for that. You can play him if you have to without, somebody you think will start. But, so you don't want to drop. I forgot again to have my light on, by the way. I'll fix that.
Lock it in.
Turn my mic off. Yeah, sorry. So he's not droppable. Who is? Let me give you a couple names and make the first one quick. We talked about him last week. Michael Thomas. Last night we have the ESPN crew talking about how Sean Payton shot down any questions about Michael Thomas's status. Week 8. I know part of this answer depends on your record, but if we're sitting on 3 or 4 okay wide receivers, to fill out flex positions, and we're a little bit light at running back, we're holding on to players like Ronald Jones, can we cut Michael Thomas?
Oh man, I would probably cut Mike, depending on your roster. I would cut Michael Thomas before I cut Ronald Jones, just because, again, Ronald Jones is an injury away from being a RB2 week to week. Mm-hmm. Michael Thomas is, I don't know, man. I watched Jameis Winston. And he just looks, he's, I don't trust the offense. And again, there are teams where I went really wide receiver heavy this year. So like there are teams where even when Michael Thomas comes back and he's healthy, he might be my 5th, 6th receiver. Like I'm not benching a lot of these receivers for him. And he's not, and I don't see him being a wide receiver 1 at all, or even a wide receiver 2. Right. So or like you said, even coming back at all. So once you get down to the playoffs where, okay, we're pushing for the main event playoffs, the football guys playoffs, and we need to, like, I carry two kickers in those. I probably will, maybe depends, carry two defenses, because you can't do waivers for like 5 weeks, through 3 or 4 weeks. And guys who get dropped after week 10 or later are not addable again. Right. So the pick has become very slim. So guys like Michael Thomas just sitting on your bench. Again, I have very little Michael Thomas, so I don't really have to make this decision, and I get it. You drafted him and you're waiting. And if your team is absolutely loaded and you can afford to wait for him, do it. But if you've got a team where you might need to pick up a running back to start for you, I mean, Mageddon is gone, so thank God. But like there are situations where you might need someone to start in, in injuries and all that. I would drop Michael Thomas before I dropped a really good handcuff running back.
Looks like we got away with it with Jerry Jeudy. The first week he was injured, and we talked about, would you cut Jerry Jeudy? And you talked me into no. I was more down the middle, but he is good to go for week 8. It seems we'll see how he plays. What about Trey Lance or even Justin Fields? Now, if you have I have a team with Brady and Lance, and in retrospect, obviously it was kind of arrogant to pick Lance after Brady. You sort of have to accept that Brady is going to be great for you and you don't need the second option. But at his age, I middled it a little bit. Lance and Fields, who might be the worst quarterback that you would start as your only quarterback and then cut the rookies? And they're different situations. Cut the rookies and ride with the solo guy. I mean, the top guys seem obvious. Maybe Brady's among them. But after you get to a point where you might want to have the protection.
Yeah, and that's interesting because today I really started to go through, we're starting to push for these playoffs and you're starting to see that your teams that are good and your teams that are kind of just need some luck or just aren't going to make it. And I'm looking at the quarterback position. I have some Brady Lance teams, or I have some, I have a lot of Jalen Hurts Lance or Jalen Hurts Fields or stuff like that. And, and that scares me because a guy like Lance who isn't starting, he's hurt. And when he is healthy, is he even going to start? And then I got a guy like, like a Fields or another athletic quarterback, right, that relies on a lot of run, like Jalen Hurts. Like I said, if he gets hurt, I'm in big trouble. So I'm dropping Lance. So to kind of make, if I have Lance and I need if I have Kirk Cousins and Lance, I might just drop Lance and pick up Daniel Jones or something like that, depending on the strength of schedule and how the matchups play out, because I can't hold a quarterback that's not going to play. And when he does, he's not that good. In Fields, I mean, listen, pull up the receipts of these podcasts, man. No one was more excited to draft Fields than I was, and I'm dropping him everywhere because he's playing and he's not producing. So I can't have that as my number 2. I've got to have another solid, I'll pick up almost anyone over Fields. If I do have Fields, and people are going to kill me for this, you never do this, never carry 3 quarterbacks. If I do have Fields, he's my 3rd quarterback, and I'm just waiting for him to either figure it out, which probably isn't going to happen, or he's my next droppable player that I'll go drop for somebody else. But yeah, Fields and Lance are perfectly droppable if you need to pick up something else.
A key point there seems to be how much confidence can you have that they'll be on the field? And Hurts has been great for fantasy, but that's less likely than a Derek Carr or Lawrence. Of course, he could be another one. Tua is in between. He had a nice fantasy week last week, but yes, do they go all the way with him? Quickly, where are you on Watson, his value?
That's a great – I was just going to say that. I've been doing waivers. I saw him. He was popping up there, and I don't know. See, quarterback generally doesn't win these things, right? So, I don't think I need to go crazy about it. Am I going to drop if someone wants to drop Lance and pick him up, I get it totally, because he could be, especially word on the street is he could be traded and start this year. Mm-hmm. So, I totally get that. It depends on my roster. I could see picking him up, and maybe if you had a guy that just hit the IR and you got a spare roster spot, pick him up, see what happens. But I wouldn't want him as my second quarterback going into the playoffs, crossing my fingers that he gets traded or something like that. And the other thing you mentioned about the quarterback's playing, the thing about Fields is he's played and he hasn't performed. So it's not like we're waiting for something like it's just not going to happen this year. It may not happen ever. I mean, I don't know if you saw him on the sidelines. He looked like the last place on earth he wanted to be was on that sidelines during that game. And it was ugly. It's ruining him. Unfortunately, we've seen it so many times. And that's my thing with him. I might rather have Watson than Fields probably, because at least if Watson plays, you're getting fantasy points.
Speaking of Watson, there is a Houston Chronicle report tonight that there has been a deal agreed on between the Texans and the Dolphins, but that the Dolphins want his legal issues resolved before making the trade. And, that might not be easy. What happened to my screen this time?
I don't know. I was just going to say it just fell.
You know what, Adam? So I've had enough problems tonight. The lights and I'm obviously showing my age. My wife thinks these things are bad for, what are you doing with those cords?
No, I think those are fine.
This could be one where I'm especially exposed. I feel like this is it's not part of the look, but functional. I don't know how
as long as it's
they are
not
to look
attached
at.
to the back of your glasses so that you can rest your glasses on your shirt. As long as it's not a pair of those,
No, it's
I think
definitely
you're
not
good to go.
The glasses are a prop anyway.
That's right. That's right.
All right, let's talk about Kyle Pitts. He's fun to talk about.
Yeah.
What I want to figure out is whether or not there were mistakes made in the draft process, right? I mean, isn't that important to do? Is when you have Pitts, because right now I'm seeing and hearing a lot of affirmation of, what was pretty much the best case scenario. Targets, downfield. Watch the game against the Dolphins if you hadn't seen them already. Just a couple of amazing catches. I mean, the ball's behind him and low. Matt Ryan, his coach wants him to be considered criminally underrated. Some of those passes were just off, but Pitts bailed him out, and they won the game because of Pitts. He made a big catch on the last drive. So he was everybody's tight end 4 to 6. He was always with Andrews and Hawkinson in some order. And I think I was on the optimistic side. I know I was.
You were.
When it came to Pitts. I tend to end up overdoing it with rookies. But it didn't happen for me. And I would be in a draft where Kittle was still on the board, so it was going to be Kittle over Pitts. The way around that, I want you to tell me if I'm making excuses here. The way around that seems to be draft 50 teams. and then you can have plenty of everybody and show your hand going into Halloween, like, see, I drafted this guy, I have this guy, I have this guy. But most of us can't do that. So was it reasonable to take Pitts, like tight end 2 in this draft, or was like the good player never going to do that because, Waller was just better value, so to speak, or all those guys? Or
just, and maybe just like safer. So here, I'll pull up a draft here. We can look at. So this is a main event draft that I did, just to kind of look at where Pitts was going and all that. So Pitts here went in the 3rd, and by the time main event draft weekend was happening, like the last drafting week of the season, this is where Pitts was going. He was going mid 3rd to early 3rd sometimes. He was going before Hawkinson. He was going, obviously before Andrews. And if you wanted Pitts, it got to the point where like you were crossing your fingers. So I was team 9 here, and I wanted Pitts actually here because I didn't have a ton of Pitts, and he's got that, and you're seeing it now. He had that potential to just, like, he's not a tight end. He's a receiver. He's like Mike Gesicki, but way better. Like, Mike Gesicki's not a tight end. He's a receiver. He lines up. He never lines up in line at the tight end spot. And that's Pitts. Like, Pitts he's a receiver that you're getting tight end eligibility for in tight end premium at 1.5 points per catch, So I think, taking Pitts at 2 overall. So if you're talking about taking Pitts at 8th overall, or 9th or the back end of the first round, I think that's a little bit, too much, because you're talking about if you're not drafting 50 teams and you want to just go and get him. But I think if you wanted to take him in the late 2nd, I think that was okay, because again, I think Waller's ceiling's higher and floor. Kelsey's obviously Kelsey. Kittle was hurt, but I think after those guys, taking them wherever, even before Kittle, like I think that was okay, especially when it comes to high stakes main event stuff. Like, you got to go get your guy. And if you think Pitts is going to be an 80 catch, 1,000-yard receiver, then go get him. I mean, what's the difference between, like, if the guy at 6 here would have taken Pitts at 6 in the 2nd round and didn't take Hopkins, and then took CeeDee Lamb, he'd probably be in better shape, than Hopkins and Pitts. So,
but would he have ever taken Pitts over Kittle? Like, how often? I know it's tiers, and
sure.
there were lots of main event drafts where Adams was the first receiver, or Hill was the first receiver, or Diggs was the first receiver. There might have been a Ridley example of that. You see the same group of players, but they're ordered differently. I don't think it's never like Darren Armani would know, but Pitts cracking that top 3 even was rare. So
Right.
I don't know what to call that. You know, like you didn't have to order your tier the same way, but you watch everybody else. And what I think most of us are doing are trying to figure out the edges within that information.
Right.
But we're not going to step on top of the information. We're not going to move it around. We're just going to try to figure out edges and then building strategies from what we know about how most people are grouping players. So, I mean, if this guy at 6 is thrilled with that, you know, picking him over Hawkinson, who's been fine, and Andrews, who's also been fine. But Pitts, I mean, that could really take off. And, you know, everybody playing in these things knows the immense value of a tight end who can produce like, well, he just did on Sunday.
Yeah. And the interesting thing too is like, it's funny. The closer that a player that you want is to your ADP, like the more likely you are to not get them, because like Pitts' ADP was going, let me pull it back up. Pitts' ADP was going where Team 6 was drafting in the third round. But it's like, man, do I risk him going at ADP and me getting him, or do I just say, you know what, I'm going to take him way ahead of ADP, ahead of George Kittle, just to make sure that I have him, but then I don't feel as good about it. I don't love it.
Right.
You know, so I feel like if maybe he picked, you know, at 4 or at 3, maybe he's more likely to take Pitts or something like that, or maybe.
Well, then, I mean, as you know, Adam, like then your draft position determines your fate. I mean, then like,
right.
You get your draft position. It's another thing you're trying to work within and make sure you don't step way out of line when it comes to value.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like draft position does determine your fate. I mean, Crack Rock was talking on Twitter today about like how, you know, this 0 RB can't. And I love Crack Rock's awesome. He's really, really smart. He's a really successful player. But this whole notion that like Derrick Henry breaks 0 RB because he's obviously the most valuable. Well, if you picked 9th, you didn't get Derrick Henry. Like if you picked 3rd, you didn't get Christian McCaffrey. Like, so like this whole idea that we can wrap an entire strategy around one player or 2 players that you didn't even have a shot at. So I'm doing the 3K. I'm in the 3K varsity and I picked 12th. And my idea at 12 was to go, I said, what can I do at 12 that team 1 can't do? Like, where can I get an advantage? I mean, you know what? I'm going to take 2 really good running backs, Najee Harris and maybe Aaron Jones or something. I'm going to take 2 really good running backs because they can't do that. It came to 12 and I went Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs because they were there. They're never there. And my team's number 1 by 100 points and I'm totally happy with it. But like draft position, draft order really does determine your fate a lot of times. And that's why you should do a lot of drafts.
Again, you drafted 9, you can't get Derrick Henry. If you drafted 1, you can't get Derrick Henry.
That's a good point. That's a good point. You can see you can. Maybe that's your edge. Maybe you're the guy that just, you know, you're the one who wanted Travis Kelce in the pros versus Joes at 1 overall. Like maybe that's your edge. It's just you're the guy that's just going to throw ADP in the trash.
No, it never will be, because I fundamentally don't subscribe to the premise that you can know what's going to happen to that extent. I just don't. So I will be a consensus player and I'll make the same choices as everyone else within that group. And I won't buy enough teams to cover all my bases. They said about Pitts, so I guess I'm just dead money. I thought you add that up. What they said about Pitts was if you're drafting him where he's going, you're drafting him at his ceiling, and I guess maybe not.
Yes, and that's a good point too. We'll see if he finishes. I mean, if he finishes 4 at the tight end position, then you drafted him kind of right where he went, right where he should go. Although I got to tell you, next year, man, I can't wait to draft a lot of Kyle Pitts. Because I didn't draft a lot of him this year. I was the Hawkinson guy, and I'm still happy with my Hawkinson picks. I was a Mark Andrews guy. I'm super happy with that. So, and that's the thing too. Like people forget, like you can, and maybe at the end of the year, we'll recap a lot of these drafts that we did. We'll do like a recap episode, and like you can be wrong and still be right. You can be wrong and still be successful. You just need to be right a couple times during a draft. People who Kyle Pitts is really, really great. But if you took Andrews in the 4th, you're happy. If you took Hockenson in the late 3rd after that, you're fine. Kyle Pitts isn't necessarily a league winner, so but I can't wait to draft a bunch of them next year when he's going, in the late 2nd, early 3rd, because I see it a little bit.
First round.
You think he's going first round? Okay.
Sure. Tight end is valuable, and nothing happening this year yet is changing that or diminishing that. And you've got injuries at running back, Devontae Adams on COVID, Tyreek Hill's quad, like Ridley. If Pitts makes a year out of this, he'll go 101 sometimes.
That's true. He has the rest. He's just getting heated up. He has the rest of the year to just smash. So
right.
Yeah, I could definitely see him going.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun. Depends on quarterback there. We'll see what they are going into next year, the rest of their team. They'll have the same coach.
Yeah.
But they could have a different quarterback next year. They'll be interesting. I'm just, excited watching him and a little bit jealous. And, I think the right thing, it's the deep end. You try to figure out, well, what did I miss here? And I'm not sure it's anything, but maybe. All right. Well, he's exciting. New respect for the 3rd quarter. So I sent that to you with no explanation. You tweeted it. All I wanted to do with this was it's not a great title.
That's a great title.
The publisher and the editor will talk, and they're going to want to make some changes. I think what happened to me overall in drafts was the 3rd quarter of drafts. So after halfway.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily at the bottom, because I think at the bottom everybody's guessing a little bit. But that on a 20-round draft, rounds 11 to 15, man, I have new respect for the value of that, because I don't want just what's happened in 7 weeks to tell me something I'm not sure it should be telling me, because there's still so much randomness in it. But there were rookies in that range that have not come through for one reason or another. And I think I'm like a lot of people, Adam. I stay away from some of those safe receiver types usually. I'm thinking of Sterling Shepard or Marvin Jones, guys that you want them. They have to stay healthy. Then there's only so much you can control here, but players who are pretty solid for the most part. Beasley, maybe that's a little bit early for him, but another one. Devonte Parker was one of these guys for me. And in one draft, I thought of this, like, let me get somebody safe, because enough with Elijah Moore, enough with Bateman, and then Parker got hurt. So again, only so much you can do with it, but really feel like in a draft, you got to sort of stay on the ball throughout.
Yeah, I'll pull up that same draft just so we can look at it, so we can get some names that maybe you were looking at. I love the 3rd quarter of the draft, rounds maybe, 10, 11 through 13 or 14, because you just get to pick whoever you think is going to be great. Forget ADP. Right. So I think I'm team 9. So a couple of my guys, I think I took Leonard Fournette is a guy who I have everywhere. He's round 10. He might not be the 3rd quarter of the draft or whatever, but close. Yeah. And running back for 41, like, there you go. There's my Brady Fields. Right. So, Zach Ertz, Cole Beasley, like, just guys that you like, that you can kind of close your eyes and imagine, what if Darrell Williams, what if CAH goes down? He went down. What if Cole Beasley's still awesome again this year? He's had his games, and now Dawson Knox is hurt, so we'll see. But look at that, Christian Kirk to another team in round 15, Rashad Bateman in round 16. Like, these are the fun rounds. These are the rounds where, you kind of early on in the process, you kind of target your sleepers and target your guys that you think, either running backs or receivers, that you think are gonna hit, and you can just take them. And these are the guys that when you look at your ownership percentages at the end of the year, like, oh, I have 50% of this guy, because you just kept taking him, and that and I think that's fun. And I think that as long as you these are the kind of rounds that can really make you money, right? If you're right in each particular, and again, each year is different. Like, one year you might miss all of them, and the next year you might hit on a bunch of them, and that's where and that's where a lot of these guys are still develop into like my guy this year. And I say is Traquan Smith. I had Traquan Smith everywhere before the Mike thing and the Michael Thomas thing. And I remember tweeting, oh man, I was victory lapping that. And then he gets hurt and he has his injury and all that stuff. And it's like, man, that what coulda, shoulda been there. But those are the fun rounds. I think
are you out on him now or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't have a lot of him left. I'll be honest with you, because he was a guy that I was cutting early on to try to fight all these injuries and stuff. I probably don't have much of him left. Salvin Ahmed is a guy that I have a little bit left because he's a running back and I had him everywhere. But I know a guy that I know you were high on here that I'm seeing was Rashad Bateman. He's a guy that now is going to catapult.
Yep. Definitely. It's interesting. You can't read everybody and listen to everybody, but you have your favorites and you're one of them. And I will listen to you and say like, well, he likes this guy and just keep him in mind. There's so much to think about in the process. And you also want to just sort of take a deep breath and realize how much luck there is in it. So, that's a great job. And a couple of those names, Madison has obviously worked out so far and could still be a big player toward the end. So one more thing. Go ahead. I was
just going to say just real quick. And I think the people who are the most successful at fantasy football are the ones that realize how much luck there is in it. Yeah. And and you can incorporate that into your strategy. You don't have to just blindly, there's a bunch of luck, so let's just close it right. No, like, take players that if luck hits right, it's kind of like your hole cards in poker. Like, everyone gets 2 cards, but some cards are going to hit more times than others. And I'm not a huge poker guy, so I don't know how to make the analogy better, but I think that it's like that, like embrace that luck, embrace the variance. And kind of that can strengthen your team.
Instincts in a word.
Instincts. Let's go.
Instincts. All right. One of the first things I remember you telling me last year when we met was, you've got this great volume of teams, and as the season goes along, there's some you just sort of abandon. You only have so many hours of the day, and you put your effort into the ones that are doing the best.
Yeah.
Are we at the point where you're abandoning anybody? Like, what teams are out of it? Take the main event.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. I think now is the time where you can. Well, there's one more week now this year, so I give it another week. And the cool thing about the FFPC, I got to tell you, is the structure where it's points and record points. You always you're going to look at a team and you're going to be like, man, this team's only 70 points out of a playoff spot. Now it's 6 teams back from that. There's 6 teams in between you and a playoff spot, but I can make that 70 points up. I got Saquon Barkley coming back. Like, here I go, so let me take that back. Probably not yet because there is that extra week, but it's coming up quick, especially for people like myself who have, 60 teams I'm setting lineups for. But again, I'm still working through the grind. I'm working through the process. I'm not skipping teams in waivers. Like, I'm still going through, but I might be way more aggressive on those teams that I'm 70 points back. I might be, you know what? I need a guy for this week. Here's a $400 bid on the guy just because I need him, and who cares if he misses, whatever, this team's done. So I think
makes it easier for the other players.
It does. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I hope there's no teams out there not setting their lineups and stuff like that, but because I think you always have to do that. You gotta respect the process, but yeah, as far as like really being attentive to it and really nurturing, because like I said, today I really started going through my best teams and looking at strength of schedule and like quarterback matchups. All right, can I defense matchups? Where can I get that one defense week 13 to get me? I'm not doing that for a lot of the teams. Just kind of the ones that are kind of the top quarter or top half.
Yeah, I played against Kareem Hunt last week in the Football Guys Championship.
Nice.
And I pretty much needed that break the way that turned out.
There you go.
It's my first year taking the FFPC leagues like really seriously. And after last night's game, I've got about half my teams are in playoff position, which I'm really happy about. And I'm telling you today, Adam, it's all I thought about all day.
Let's go. Like, I love that you're you're in the deep end. You're so deep.
I am drowning in the deep end, but it's just all I thought about all day was, I can kind of tell you who's on which team now.
Yeah.
And pretty soon there'll be like, okay, this guy's buy is coming up. Next week, at some point, we got to talk about that roster, that freeze strategy where players can't be picked up after they get cut. There's got to be a lot to say about that. And I'm new. A lot of you watching are probably experienced players. I'm not. I'm learning from Adam and from the many of you that I've interacted with here since starting, but I'm loving it. I really am. Like it's been a lot of fun and an obsession.
How has prime time been for you? Like I know we talked through our chat and all that on a lot of prime time games for what we got going on. But like for me personally, this has probably been prime time can be so cruel. It can be so great. And I feel like this year, I feel like a lot of my memories of high stakes is just the tough losses or the great wins that you had on primetime. I feel like this year primetime has been so good to me as far as what I've needed. And it's funny because if that game, like the game last night, if that was a 1 o'clock Sunday game where Lockett got 2 points, who cares? But when you're trying to fade Lockett and Metcalf all game and they get like 3 targets, you're just sitting there just laughing and going, what is Pete Carroll doing? He's an idiot. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah, you put any game in that spot, there'll be a lot to talk about. Well, this week was excellent. I had Taylor and Debo on a team Sunday night, and then also looking to generally fade last night, except for Kamara. So it couldn't have gone better. But one main event team I share with my partner Mark is we just got off to the wrong start. We're battling, but the first week we had a stat correction in our favor, so we did not celebrate a win. We lost by an inch, and then it got flipped, so we didn't really get to enjoy it. Still better than the alternative. And then week 2 was Prescott against the Eagles on Monday night, where we sat there the whole night stressing. Prescott and Lamb could not get there. Finally, on his last play, take the lead and then raise a glass to that, only to see him come back into the game for 2 kneel downs and a loss of a 10th. So, like anything, enough games go by, you win some, you lose some. But yeah, I mean, I think the overriding story on the primetime games is how much fun they've been.
Yes.
I mean, this week, not really, but a lot of the night games have been really great.
What do we got? What's the Sunday nighter this week? I know KC's Monday. What's Sunday night? Do we know?
Dallas, Minnesota.
Oh, yeah. Just fantasy feast. Love it.
Love it. Love it.
So good. So good.
Thursday is Green Bay, Arizona. No Adams, probably. No Lazard either, probably.
Are we so no Adams for sure, or can he test out? He can test in.
He would need two negative tests starting today, and they have to travel. So unlikely, but I don't think it's definite. And Lazard is not vaccinated in a close contact. Lazard had to know yesterday.
Yeah,
being in the meeting room.
Yeah, that's right.
But nobody else did. I guess if you knew vaccination status, you might have thought that. But, to whatever extent waivers was talked about today, Lazard was a name, and he's not anymore.
Yep.
MVS, if he comes off IR, Equinemius St. Brown. I think I'd love to see Aaron Jones catch more balls. Maybe they can use Dillon and Jones together and get creative.
Listen, you say Aaron Jones. I have 0 Robert Tonyan. Maybe he'll catch a ball now. I mean, I've just been listening to everyone else complain about it. It's just been like, man, even a guy who didn't like him for fantasy purposes, like the guy really doesn't do anything. It's bizarre.
Well, you can't be cynical. You're winning.
That's true. That's true.
Your teams are doing well. No yellow, but otherwise. Oh, cheap shot. The Red Sox aren't on it. Oh, that would be a cheap shot.
Another cheap shot. Look at you.
They're piling up. Thanks, everybody. Mike Schauf, Adam Krautwurst. Enjoy your week 8. We'll see you next week on the Deep End.
See you guys.